NBA, the worst spot a team can be is the middle of the pack. You're not good enough to compete for a champion with the best of them, but you're not exactly good enough to tank with the worst of them. You're very unlikely to hold a good pick in the next draft, and you're probably in the middle of the pack because you can't develop players well enough, as well as your stars also not being good enough. Unfortunately for the Chicago Bulls, they are the perfect example of this. In the past decade of games, the Bulls have a collective record of 360 wins and 433 losses. This would be the 19th best record in the NBA within that span, and that would approximately be a 9th or a 10th seed in either conference. And this past season follows this current trend as they were 39 and 43, another 9th place in the Eastern Conference. That just tells you that the Bulls are mediocre. But why are the Bulls mid? They have vets in DeMar DeRozan and Nikola Vucevic and another star in Zach LaVine who are good but only good enough to keep a team afloat above 500. The team has struggled in developing players, and Patrick Williams is the perfect example of that. A player who has had potential from the draft and was seen as a project, but has shown no notable improvement in the 4 years he's been in the league. In fact, if you have looked at his season 3 and 4 stats, they are almost identical. Also, Kobe White took 5 years to develop before he had a breakout year. And you have a bunch of younger players who just don't fit the timeline with the older veterans and stars that they have currently. Usually when teams are in a situation, there's a flow chart that they can follow in order to improve. You can maximize the value of stars and get as much value through trades in the hopes of maybe competing under a new roster. You can focus on player development, prioritizing your younger players' growth. You can patch holes in a team and hope that those patched holes will allow you to have enough to actually compete for a championship. Or you can just do a full reset on your team and trade away everything for future value. Sadly, the Bulls actually found a hidden fifth option that most teams would prefer not to do: doing nothing. The Bulls have committed to this option for the past 2 years, and this has ultimately led to the value of all of their players diminishing. You see, when you let a middling team exist without any intervention, it's only inevitable that value decreases. Your stars become complacent and will either settle for the money that they receive or force themselves out via a trade. Younger players become more selfish and try to improve on their own and get their own touches. And the coaching obviously becomes the scapegoat when nothing comes to work, when the front offices decide not to do anything. But it isn't completely doom and gloom for the Chicago Bulls, as they've actually finally made the decision that will change the turning point of their future. They traded their best defender and three-point shooter in Alex Caruso for Josh GIddey. You would think when you see the names in these trades that the Bulls actually received more than just Josh GIddey and actually got maybe some draft value out of it. But when you look into the details, it was just a 1-for-1 trade, which means no picks were lost or acquired in this trade. So that means they just straight up traded Alex Caruso, one of the best perimeter defenders in the league, for Josh GIddey. Surprising when there were multiple rejected offers that included multiple picks for Caruso from other teams, and they settled for this. But I guess the value drops so low since everyone knows that players want to leave the team, that the other option that was revealed was the Kings' offer for the 13th pick in the draft. Ignoring the sizable drop-off from GIddey from his sophomore season and other controversies that I'd rather not speak on YouTube, GIddey is seen as a below-average defender who struggles with the three ball, which would make you beg to ask the question, why even make the trade if you're the Bulls? While I think the Bulls could have gotten way more out of the trade than what they actually received, I think this is actually one of the first steps in the Bulls trying to modernize their offense for the current league. See, one of the main things is whenever you make a 1-for-1 trade, you're putting all the potential value in a trade onto one player instead of having multiple options when you include future picks and other players, which means the Bulls actually value what Josh GIddey can provide. So the next question you want to ask after realizing that is, what value does Josh GIddey actually provide? Well, at his core, GIddey is a 6'8" guard who can fill up the stat sheet when used as a primary ball handler. In references to games without SGA, GIddey has averaged 17 points per game, 8 rebounds, and 7.3 assists. The whole reason he struggled during his third season was that Jalen Williams' development as a secondary ball handler actively took the ball away from GIddey. And benching him would only make the situation worse for him, so it makes sense that GIddey would want to start a new opportunity in Chicago, as he gets to be a primary ball handler once again. I want to emphasize again that when a team makes a 1-for-1 trade, they feel like that they can develop the player that they received, and they might view that player as maybe a diamond in the rough. So surely they're trying to help develop GIddey to be one of the better big guards in the NBA. See, one of the things we know about a modern offense today is that a big guard who can produce stats as a primary ball handler has been proven to work. We can look at the two current best guards in the NBA in Luka Doncic and SGA, and we can see that last season they led their teams to 50 plus wins. I'm obviously not trying to imply that GIddey will reach the level of SGA and Luka, but big guards are coveted throughout the league. Now, once you pair GIddey with Kobe White, another guard who is 6'5", you're adding major size to your backcourt, which is always valued. But the Bulls aren't just going to end it here with Josh GIddey. In order for this to work for them, they will need to add spacing throughout their team. Josh GIddey just left the team with probably one of the most spacing in the NBA to almost nothing in Chicago. If we look back at SGA and Luka's teams, both their teams actually heavily rely on spacing and three-point shooting as well. But on the Bulls, there were only 5 players who shot above 35% from 3 last season. But they're actually looking to improve on that. See, it starts to look better if you look at the younger players that the Bulls value. Kobe White, for example, is a good three-point shooter on good volume, and this is also a chance for Patrick Williams to finally take the leap that the Bulls have been looking for. Like Kobe White, Williams can jump in value in his 5th season with a guard who can help provide him good looks. And if Williams takes that step for development, can actually settle into the active role of a 3-and-D player, which is always valued on any team in the NBA. The Bulls have also picked up Matas Buzelis in the draft, a wing who has shown promise on the defensive end and has athleticism for days, and his ceiling is purely dependent on the development of his shot creation. But even then, that still won't be enough to develop a better team for the Bulls. The Bulls will need to still bolster their roster with more wings to modernize their team, as we've just recently seen the Knicks load up on wings with the addition of OG and Mikal Bridges. I think that in order for the Bulls to catch up, this will require them to ship out one of their main stars, and DeRozan looks like the main fit for this. While he is the healthier option of the two, being him and LaVine is more likely to fit into a modernized offense that the Bulls team is looking for. And there have been suggestions that with the additions that Chicago has made, that LaVine is more likely to stay with the team. We can also know that DeRozan's contract is expiring, and the Bulls will have to make a decision on whether or not he stays, and there's been some murmurs about him leaving the team soon. An option that the Bulls have is to let him walk, which would in turn lower cap space and allow them to look for more suitable wings. But another option is a sign and trade with another team. The Bulls, without DeRozan's contract, would be under the salary cap, and there can be potential trades involved with another team that could allow the Bulls to trade him for those wings or 3-and-D players that the Bulls are looking for. This wouldn't make the Bulls a threat immediately, but this could set the Bulls up for the future, and this is something that they've needed desperately for a couple of years now. Now, while the move to get GIddey wasn't ultimately the best in the world, they've made a clear statement that they're trying to get younger and modernize their team. Now, things don't have to go perfectly in order for them to actually brighten up their future. There have been potential options with moving LaVine, as he's been a sore topic of trade rumors for 3 years now. They can also try and trade Nikola Vucevic to get some more value. But the fact that the Bulls are finally making decisions indicates that they're no longer a complacent team, which is always good for them future-wise. And it's better late than never in trying to actually get value out of the players they already have. While the GIddey trade was questioned by the majority, I think it's a good sign to come that the Bulls are no longer satisfied with being mediocre.